So Vinny, Liane, myself, we've been having a fun week already down in NOLA. Actually, I was going to start the first question in a very interesting way. So the Yak, which is our one of our live comedy shows, Hershey's and Reese's is sponsoring this year. Thank you guys for the sponsorship at Super Bowl. Irreverent show, fun flowing show, but there's this thing called the wet wheel on the Yak. And with the wet wheel, basically all the guys on the Yak, you spin the wheel, and then something weird has to happen that day. With these guys this week, you either get a bucket of Hershey's lava poured on you. Yesterday, you happen to get a crawfish after you pinch your nipple. And Liane walked in right when the guys were doing this today. So Liane, how was your first experience with Barstool this week?
I don't know if I can call myself a stoolie just yet, but I think what actually, another member of our team, Ben, and I were there together, and we said, man, there is such a community around what these guys are doing, and they know their community and their audience so well, that who are we to say that people aren't going to love, and apparently they do, to watch this guy put a crawfish on his nipple and see how long he could stand it. But it's kind of speaks to the value of community and the community you guys have built and what we're hoping to tap into for the Reese's brand.
Awesome. And today is also, somebody got a bucket of lava chocolate poured on them, so that
one I got.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Question year 2, I believe, for you guys at the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Why you guys returning? What's the experience? How you guys liking it so far?
Yeah, so predominantly we've never done the Super Bowl. We did it once in 2019. It was like a random last minute, hey, do you want a spot for very cheap? And we threw something together. And everyone was like, oh, it wasn't successful, but we didn't put any time into it. Last year we were launching Reese's Caramel Cup, part of the family, which is the segue into it. But this year is, we actually did it right. We went in and did a creative campaign around it. We launched it very exclusively within the Super Bowl as our kicking off point. Saw really good success early on. You know, it's funny, I was joking about this, but we got back the day after the Super Bowl. I was like, did it work? It's like, it literally aired 12 hours ago. But we went on Walmart sales and we started looking and we're like, there's a pretty big pot. So we knew it could create momentum. It gives something to talk to our retailers about, sell in. So as we were launching this year's innovation with Reese's Lava, it felt the right time again to lean in, do the Super Bowl. But what we're doing this year is way beyond just a spot, and I think that's the biggest differentiator in how we're leaning into the moment more than we did last year. Because last year we did it last minute, we had a good surround. This year, clearly, not only are we doing a surround, we're doing in real life. So we got your partnership, a lot of things that are going on at Barstool right now. We sponsored the Kelsey's party last night. Reese's was everywhere. So the branding, everyone's talking about it. Like, it makes it that much better. So we'll be curious to see how it all comes together. But we're certainly looking at it as more than just a spot now.
In the end, I know, right? Publicis recently won Hershey's, and Milton won your first year with these guys in the Super Bowl. How's that experience been so far?
Yeah, so far so good, and I don't know if I would say any different on this stage if it wasn't. But it's been an awesome, truly incredible partnership so far, and I think one of the things we love most about it is the team's willingness and openness to trying new things. I think when we started talking about Super Bowl, we said, yes, this is the right place to be. I think we all know, and I'm sure it's been talked about all day on this stage, that it's the last place to get critical mass eyeballs in a live viewing experience. And now there's, however many brands participating, and the reality is, yes, you're gonna get a ton of eyeballs, you're gonna get a ton of impressions, hopefully you're gonna get a lot of attention. The reality is that you can't just do the spot, because while their eyeballs are there, they're on all the different spots, on the game, on everything that's happening in the moment, wherever they're consuming the game. And I think what we've really unlocked this year is the ability to show up in a bigger way, to be more memorable, and to have it live pre, during, and hopefully post the actual game itself. So I'd say that's the thing we're probably the most proud of so far in the partnership.
I mean, there's a lot of volcanoes we need to use and leverage after this.
We did crane in a chocolate volcano to our set this week, so some amazing stuff happening there. There's a volcano at the Dozen Live, so the guys have definitely been eating their fair share of big lava cups. I think, Liane, to your point, kind of the game around the game. It's funny, we're in New Orleans. This is the kickoff of the social war room with the blackout, 13 years ago, 12 years ago. But really, the reality is the Super Bowl's kind of won this week. And with the stuff you guys were doing with Kelsey and Barstool, how did you guys end up there? What was the planning process around that? How did that happen?
You start.
I'll say it starts with the audience, right? And it needs to start with the audience and what they're consuming. And I think when we first started talking about Barstool and some of the stuff we're doing with Wondery for the New Heights podcast, everyone felt a little nervous because it's like an uncontrolled environment. It feels like relinquishing control of the brand to other parties. But what I think has become more and more true every single year since that, that year in 2013 is that you need influential people that speak to a specific community in order to actually make an impact. We can control as much as we want, but it's not going to resonate with people. And you need to be able to relinquish that control and let them have fun within some guardrails and parameters with the brand to actually be able to drive resonance. And I think that's something that, we're seeing become more and more important every year. And that was really the unlock we were looking for this year.
Yeah, and I think we take this even further back. Sage and I have been trying to sell in Barstool Sports at the Hershey company for, I don't know, almost 2 years. But when we finally found a moment, to Liane's point, we found an audience, we found a product within our product suite that wasn't Reese's. We did it through our protein brand, which is One Bars, and we really honed in on the golfing community. We said, all right, let's do a small way in, let's test this out, let's really get a good learning. That, to me, was a jumping off point after the work we did with the One Bars and the Foreplay Pod, all the golf community leaned in. We integrated, on every episode and everything that they're doing. Hole in One just so happens to be such a nice trend for us to kind of build on. It's too easy. And right away it was like, well, how do we know if this is right? How do we know if this is working? What are we doing? And for me, this was more of a brand building, not a sales overnight kind of mentality. And what we did was kind of pace and looked at share growth. What is happening to the One Bars? Is share actually growing? What are we seeing happening in the world of protein? And over really 4 to 6 months, we had over 300 basis points of share growth. And there wasn't any other changes really happening on the brand. So again, we don't like to say, oh, it was all because of us, but you saw this change because one, we were buying 6-second ads with One Bars and spraying and praying on YouTube when nobody really knew the brand. And we honed in on that audience stat and really understood the golfing community was probably a good one. Went all in on that, and we saw the trajectory and the growth. And I think it gave us this new mentality internally of like, not everybody's Reese's. You shouldn't spray and pray and just talk to everybody with the mouth. You've got to find these niche groups, these communities. You have to build momentum with them. And that's hard for a business like ours to wrap their head around. What do you mean my plan doesn't have a 90% reach? You only have like a 3% household penetration. That doesn't make sense. So, we went on this journey, we got some learnings. This is now our second big one as we kick into the Super Bowl. I can't say how it's going to work yet. We have no idea, but the momentum, the feedback internally, how everyone's using this as like a big rallying moment is unbelievable. And as we're here sending videos back to everyone at home, they're like, this is truly incredible. So, I think it's getting out of our comfort zone, which is hard for a 131-year-old company. But if you don't start trying now, you're going to completely fall behind, in my opinion, because content has completely changed the game. It doesn't mean it's an either or. It doesn't mean stop doing what has worked, but it means we've got to lean in and really get better at this. And I think this week is starting to prove a lot of that out.
Agreed. I think to your point too, it doesn't just take a partner with great talent and great content. Like the brand really has to lean in.
Yep.
If the brand doesn't lean in, the talent are just going to do an ad read or they move on to the next. But I think a good example of that this week is so these guys brought and branded these awesome Reese's varsity jackets. They gave some to Dave. They gave some to Jason Kelsey last night. How did that idea come to be? What was that experience? And how's been the reaction so far from the talent?
Apparently varsity jackets are like the thing right now, which I don't think we realized, but I guess we did. But Ben, who's sitting in the back of the room, works on our content team within Publicis. Kind of was like, hey, we could like bring these jackets to all the town and like really customize them. And like, yeah, it's actually a really good idea. Why not? And then we went out and made these jackets, and they came out so incredible. Customized for Barstool on the back, customized for New Heights on the back. We as the Reese's team got one. It's all centered around the Fighting Cuppies. So we made it like it's a real thing. Last night I got to give it to Jason Kelsey, and he looks at me and goes, God, it's too hot for this. But then he put it on, and he's such a big fan of Reese's. He naturally, organically came to us last year, but seeing Dave Portnoy put it on last night, hearing him in group chats last night be like, do you have the jacket? Don't forget the jacket. Clearly it means something. These partnerships are more than just ads. And I think that's what's really starting to resonate with people on our side, how this means a lot more to people when you do it right.
Yeah, and the other thing that the jackets did, and maybe this was intentional, maybe happenstance, we'll have to ask Ben about that, is allow us to control some of the branding so that we know no matter how they interact and engage with the brand that is to some extent out of our control in the moment, we know we have these assets, the volcano that we were talking about on the Barstool set. Last night at the Kelsey party, there's a vending machine that's actually at the Riverwalk Mall today too that you can step up to, and if you scream, it's lava time, baby, it gives you a Reese's cup. And what we know is that we're building experiences that people can engage with, have fun with, and make their own, but we're still controlling the thing that we care the most about, which is the brand itself. And so, they might be saying something stupid or, doing something stupid with the jacket on, but we know that it's the right orange, it's in view, and so it's really about kind of creating the assets so that you've got some control over the things that matter to the brand and then letting them kind of spur their knowledge of their community into it.
In a way, we're borrowing their equity. The same way we have our own equity, we're now borrowing theirs. And I think when you look at it that way, everyone's like, is this an influencer? What is this? And I'm like, well, they just create content. It's a lot of fun. And we're taking on their communities, their equity with our brand. And when the two come together like that, I think it's very authentic, very natural. And it just fits with Reese's and Barstool, quite honestly, better than I think our building realized until we actually did it. So it just took doing it to get people to get around it.
Yeah, can you actually speak to that a little more about the new wave of talent, right? We're at the Super Bowl. Obviously, there's a lot of names people recognize in the NFL and their commercials, but guys like Trent and Frankie have a foreplay pod, right? They were in the Hershey building, did a panel with Vinny a couple months back, and they were rock stars and celebrities talking about on the podcast the next day. This was the first panel we ever done. We want to do panels more often. So funny from podcasters and golf guys. What has that been like internally though? Hey, this isn't the traditional NFL deal, but lending our brand to talent that they're not used to.
Yeah, they spoke for 10 minutes in that episode about Milton Hershey, who is our founder, who is what we all live and breathe every day, the ethos that was started 130 years ago, but they, while on the show, were digging in more and more as they kept saying things, and looking it up in the show and talking about Hershey, you can't pay for that. You know what I mean?
And we didn't.
And we didn't. But the not only that, which was awesome, but Frankie and Trent are just talking about one bars without us ever asking them to. They're bringing it in more of the people they have on their show who are also talking about one bars. And I think that momentum is, when I took the snippet of the podcast the next day and shared that clip with our C-suite, and they kind of were just didn't fully get it, but why did they just talk about Hershey for 10 minutes and talk about Milton's mansion that overlooks the old factory? And they're that's pretty cool, but they don't know what they don't know, so I get it. But it shows this new world. It gives us something to realize that we've got to build a new muscle. We've got to attack these new areas of content integrations. It doesn't mean just putting a volcano on a stage. It truly means being authentic, showing up together, and the natural occurrences that happen without us paying for it. Again, that is incredible. You can't get any ad anywhere to do that for you. So I think that's where brands and really legacy companies need to realize sure there's some brand safety things you always have to be skeptical of, I get it. But the more you lean into this or the more you don't, you're going to go one way or the other right now. And I don't think it's going to be a good way if you don't start leaning in.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll add just about kind of the talent within Barstool that's so interesting, because we do more traditional influencer, right? And there's traditional influencers, you know, Publicis bought a company, Influential, and they like to talk about it in 3 buckets: micro, macro, and mega. So you've got, you know, people that span the gamut from the biggest celebrity names all the way to like Will Arnett, Jennifer Aniston, all the way down to the mom blogger who's got an Instagram handle. And what's so interesting is you can't just look at their followership, you have to look at their degree of influence, because arguably the micro talent sometimes has greater influence over their community. And so it makes it harder because you can't just do, you know, everything at scale and one and done like you could in the past. But I think it's so interesting to just see the wide spectrum and how influencers aren't just social anymore. They're in audio, they're podcasts, they're sports, they're athletes, they're people who are, you know, showing up in video, and nothing in this new world lives in nice little channel buckets, which makes our jobs really hard. But frankly, that's kind of when we know we're doing it right, because we're living in this gray area.
Yeah, we were talking about that. Like when we kicked off our New Heights partnership, we obviously did not know this was happening and hit a home run. The first episode was with LeBron. It's like, all right, well, this is going to get scaled pretty quick. That's awesome. But what I didn't realize is because it was LeBron, it got reshared, the clips, all over. ESPN was resharing it. Bleacher Report was resharing it. But every time they did, there was a Reese's logo everywhere. And what that triggered for me is like, you're right, this isn't just a podcast. It's so much more. They're on YouTube, they're on TikTok, they're on Instagram Reels, they're everywhere. And so is our brand now. And that's where it's like, one, we have no idea how to measure the impact of all of that, which is going to be the next big challenge, I think, for this industry. But two, they're not just influencers. Like, they are true content producers. And like they're building what I think, you know, a lot of the episodic old content is not going away, but it's certainly being supplanted with a lot of this new world of content that I think is really in its early stages of where it's going to go.
Yeah, I think, Liane, to your point, and I know we chatted about this, kind of Barstool, we do social, we do podcasts, we do content, we have talent, we don't fall nicely and neatly into this bucket. So when you guys are thinking about like sports big tempos, like where does that conversation even start? Does it start with the channel? Does it start with the partner? Like what does that look like?
It's a really good question, because I think unfortunately when things don't fit into like a nice neat little box, you must experience this all the time on the sales side. It's like who do I talk to? Do I talk to the social team? Do I talk to the audio team? Video team? I kind of fit everywhere. And I think what we've done very purposefully is make sure that we lean into the places that don't feel like they fit in a square box, because I actually think there are a lot of brands who lean away. I'll share this anecdote. When we first talked about the Wondery New Heights podcast, the answer from the strategy team was, well, but we don't have that much money in audio. And it's like, yeah, but it's not just audio. It's audio, it's video, it's social, it's this, and I think where we have found is like there's a lot of kind of new muscles we as agencies, we as brands need to build to be able to handle those things at scale, because it is hard and it does get everyone out of their comfort zone a little bit. But as we think about where we see the best opportunities, you know, generally they're coming from finding the right property platform that fits for the brand. And it always has to be because the consumer's leading us there.
No, 100%. And that's, you're right. We, not just as sellers, but as Barstool, it's like, who's the right person to talk to? Is it the brand lead? Is it the content side? Usually the answer is everybody, and then that leads to the best deals and best partnerships. And I think that's kind of what happened this week, where you've been on the content side, the social side, and the audio side, all really coming together nicely. I think, right, we're at Super Bowl, it's football. You guys are also official NCAA partner, and at March Madness, an official Olympic partner. How you guys are taking over the week, per se, how is that making you guys think about the other sports tentpoles or entertainment tentpoles that you guys just around the year?
Yeah, it's very top of mind. We were literally talking about it in our Uber ride over here. But you're right, it's these moments that are few and far between now every year. You've got the always on content every day, but then you have these moments that you have to jump into, and it's more, you know, we've been NCAA partners, I think, for 15 years now, give or take. We're signed on through, I think, 2030. Same with the Olympics. And we're always complaining about it. We're like, well, then why'd you do it? Well, we did it for merchandising. It's like, okay, but we did it, so we're signed in. Let's go do something about it. Let's bring it to life. Let's do it right. You know, the Olympics last year was the most watched Olympics in many, many, many years. And it wasn't watched as your traditional TV was watched. It was watched everywhere, on every platform, on every channel. And the momentum off of that and like this, nostalgic Americana moment with these teams, like it gives everyone something to rally around and go after. And I think we've got to lean into that. If we're going to hold these ring sponsorships as a corporate partner and we're going to own NCAA March Madness and fall football, let's just go own it. Do it right. Get our brands out there. And I think that's what we're starting to learn. We don't have it perfected at all, but we are certainly going to start to play a bigger role. This week will be a starting point into what we want to go do in the next few events that are coming up.
Yeah, we've been saying it's fewer, bigger, better, right? We need to double down in the places where we know consumers are, where we know those communities and audiences are honestly spending time and getting their influence. But the other thing is we have to surround it, because I think one of the most challenging things to recognize is and navigate is consumers aren't just watching on linear TV anymore. They're not just listening to a podcast. And so if we stop as short as just buying the TV spot, be it for the Super Bowl, we're even talking about it maybe for the Oscars, if you buy the spot and then you don't show up where people are consuming it, which is in their social feed the next morning, which is on YouTube with the highlight clips, which is, going to Bustle to find out who wore what.
Chicks in the office.
Yeah, chicks in the office to find out who wore what. If you don't follow through on it, you're just gonna fall flat. And so we're trying to maximize our investment by making sure that we're buying every single place and really surrounding the consumer wherever they're going to consume that type of content.
And to that point, do you find yourself right in Super Bowl week or a challenger brand versus where you guys have the IP and the rights and do you see that kind of playing differently in the strategy, or hey, no, we know we could go out and own the week no matter what it is, so we're going to approach it?
It's a good question. I don't think we talked about it from like a challenger brand versus not. I do think what Liane was talking about earlier, the consistency of Reese's as a brand can take over almost anywhere. And I think showing up that way in those moments, regardless of how big or small you are, like the brand has been built. Own it, lean into it. I think when you think about some of these other brands, it's easier to get lost in the noise, for sure, when you're a smaller brand kind of trying to challenge against us. But I mean, the 4 brands that you guys have as your lead sponsors this week come from so many different variables. You've got chicken tenders, fantasy sports, peanut butter cups, and soda. Like, all over the place. Some are big, some are small, but like, if you know your brand well, which all 4 with you clearly know their consumer very well, I think is the most important. Then as you show up as a brand, just go own it. I do think we have the ability to drown others out because of how big Reese's is. But we certainly didn't approach it as that way in any capacity.
And I think to the point you made about not being the rights holder, right? So we don't have that category sponsorship, but I think what's important is showing up in a way that feels big, even if you don't have it. Because on the flip side, we've had years for March Madness where we've been the partner, been the sponsor, but not felt like we showed up in a big way. And just to your point, used it for merchandising. And so I actually like the challenger position better sometimes in this case, because you have to earn your way in to show up and feel big. And I think that's something we were able to accomplish this year.
It does feel like there's a lot of CPG, salty snacks, candy brands in the Super Bowl this year. Are you guys feeling that?
Yes.
Do you look at that?
I mean, we're certainly feeling it. It's I don't know why. I think we're all fighting for territories right now because we're all challenged in a lot of different ways with consumer headwinds, private label, banging at our door. But yeah, it does feel like a very heavy CPG bowl, for sure.
Any favorite, outside of course, it's Lava Time, baby. What has been some of the favorite commercials you've seen thus far?
You go first.
Well, I'm going to steal yours, but I loved the Bud Light cul-de-sac. So good. Oh my God, so good.
It's fantastic.
That was amazing. I know you guys just watched the Hellmans. I thought that was a really good play to nostalgia and the movies, and I liked both of those a lot.
I love the long form version of the Budweiser one where the Clydesdale kicks the keg all the way through town. Talk about nostalgia, bringing back, and I think in total, Anheuser-Busch has actually done a really phenomenal job of like getting back to their roots, rebuilding, what got them there. I think it's shown up really well this week. I actually just watched the Mountain Dew one. I thought it was actually pretty clever and funny on our way here. So, yeah, I think lastly, Pepsi Frito did a great job as well with theirs.
Same kind of question on the ground in New Orleans so far. I know you guys just got in yesterday. It probably feels like a week already with Kelsey House Party last night, and more events coming up. What have you seen on the ground? Kind of gravitating towards like
Reese's.
Definitely Reese's. I'd also say I thought the way, to your point, Frito-Lay, Pepsi showed up they feel a little bit everywhere, which is a really cool use of out of home, right from when you got off the plane in the airport to when you're walking around the streets. And I think what to me stands out is that it's tied so well into merchandising. I went into to CVS to get some liquid IV, because to your point, it's going to be a long week. But what I noticed was their end caps matched their out of home, and it was like that. Okay, that they really brought it full circle, which was really cool.
If you go over to the NFL Experience, they lead with a Chips and Sips campaign, and it is so consistent everywhere you go, and I think it's so well done. But to your point, like, it's everywhere. In the end cap to the out of home ad to the experience, everything is very nicely tied together.
Yeah, one of the hardest things, sorry to cut you off, I think, was figuring out how much of what we're doing at the Super Bowl is for the people at the Super Bowl versus how much is building content to reach everyone else. And that, I think, is a tricky balance for everyone. And so, as much as I envy and really admire what PepsiCo did and the surround and how everything feels so incredibly consistent, I think making sure that then is felt by people who aren't here is important as well. There are some people who really are targeting those who come and are able to afford to be here in New Orleans for the game. But for us, with the mass appeal, it was about balancing what we do on the ground, but making sure it's getting content that's going to have impressions to a broader community.
Yeah, that is a huge one for me. Like, the content we got from last night's New Heights party was insane. Because again, there was only 300 people there. But the content we had shared, Taylor was not there, unfortunately. That was like the one hope of like this could explode really well. But no, you're right. It's there aren't a lot of people who get to do this, which is awesome for everybody that's obviously in this room. But there are a lot of people in America that we need to reach and talk to, and I think it is important to make sure you get something out of it.
Last question before we throw it to the crowd for questions. So me and Vinny are both depressed Jets fans. Liane, legacy game for the Patriots. What are your guys' predictions? Who wins it?
Eagles.
I think Eagles too, and I think most of America is wanting the Eagles to win right now. So they have a lot of people behind them.
I just want to see Saquon win.
A lot of Eagles fans in Hershey.
A lot of Eagles fans. A lot of Saquon fans.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Now, I got two more questions. So, who's behind the keys for your social platforms, for your social channels? You or somebody else?
Partially on our team, yes. They've been doing a very, very nice job of the reposting and sharing this week, but it's literally a two-person team that we barely got off the ground.
Awesome. And then this is your second year in a row doing this. What was kind of your biggest takeaway last year, either positive or negative, that you're going to apply for this year?
We did nothing around the game like we are this year. We did very few little activations of media. They were smaller. They're not nearly as what we're doing this year. We've leaned in quite heavily into the holistic integration, so much so that we've got our PR agency involved. What they're doing, is the Riverwalk with the vending machine. We've really brought it all together, which was a huge learning from last year, or really a miss from last year that we learned from.
A question for like a macro brand like a Reese's or a Hershey's, like 99% of the population could be a consumer. So a question for both of you, how do you choose what niches or what demos to invest in? Because you don't want to be everything to everybody, but you want to show a variety of those different demos.
Reese's on an average 3-year basis has an 80% household penetration.
Right.
Right now, on a given year, we're about 58, which means to me there's a 42% opportunity. You're going to lose people every year. You have leaky bucket. It's literally the laws of growth. Read Byron Sharp. It holds true in almost everything that you do from a CPG perspective. So it's truly like, how do you find that smaller community, that growth area that you probably didn't tap into, or you didn't speak to in the right way, or we have to look at all of those. We do a lot of different, what we're calling demand creation spaces. How do you create demand with new communities, new parts of the world? But you're right, for brands that big, it's hard. But if you rest on your laurels, you create leaky buckets. So right now we have a leaky bucket on Reese's, quite honestly. We went from a 60 to a 58 household penetration. It's a big loss on a massive brand. So what is it? We honed in, where are we missing? We believe the things we're doing, the different audiences we're speaking to and engaging with through Barstool, through the Kelseys, are gonna help turn some of that ship around because of a lot of different data points of what the consumer leaky bucket is, why are they leaking, is it younger, is it older, and then leaning into where do we go find them.
And what you do to reach them too has been something we're approaching in kind of a segmented way. If it's a growth audience who's not buying us today, for example, Hispanic consumers, far under index for the Reese's brand, that's an area where we need to go drive relevance, drive resonance, really reach those audiences in a way that's different from the consumer who we just want to get to buy one more time at the checkout counter. They just need a reminder message versus those who are rejectors. And I think what's also challenging, but I think exciting for CPG as a category is it's not then go find those consumers and only buy them and target them and chase them with impressions. It's find out where they are and what type of content they're consuming, where they get their influence, and then go and buy those places. So it's kind of going back to the index ways of buying versus trying to be incredibly precise in every impression.
Not all impressions are created equal.
I think after all the big lava cups Barstool's been eating, that share probably went up 1% after this.
It would be good for you if it did. Promise you that.
Thank you.